Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my podcast. I apologize. It's a couple days later than my usual posting. This is the third episode. I took a day to go over to a very exciting event that took place a couple hours from here in Tampa. And I was lucky enough to be invited to attend my second TEDx event, and it was held in Tampa. Like I said, an author friend of mine was the opening speaker, and I'll share more about the speakers shortly. First off, some of you may ask, what is a TEDx or a TED Talks? And I will share that with you in detail, but I'm sure the majority of you have heard of or listened to TED Talks on various social media platforms, especially on YouTube. What does TED, T-E-D, even stand for? It stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And TEDx talks are, they're presented locally for local audiences, and they are independently owned. But there are local events all around the world. And here's what they wrote on the website, the TED.com. TEDx is a grassroots initiative created in the spirit of TED's overall mission to research and discover, quote unquote, ideas worth spreading. TEDx brings the spirit of TED to local communities around the globe through TEDx events. These events are organized by passionate individuals who seek to uncover new ideas and to share the latest research in their local areas that spark conversations in their communities. TEDx events include live speakers and recorded TED Talks and are organized independently under a free license granted by TED. These events are not controlled by TED, but event organizers agree to abide by their format and are offered guidelines for curation, speaker coaching, event organizing, and more. They learn from TED and from each other, and more than 3,000 events are now held annually. And then the TED Talk conferences are held globally. Every year, this is also from the website, quote unquote here, every year TED hosts conferences to bring together a group of expert thinkers and doers across a wide range of fields to help share ideas. They are joined by prominent academics, educators, researchers, philanthropists, environmentalists, scientists, technologists, artists, activists, and more. And if you want to go to these conferences, you'll need to apply to attend. And they read every application, but they're always actively seeking out new members. And what does it cost to go to these events? Well, TEDx cost varies from $75 to $100. And I actually paid $80 after a discount from my friend. But TED Talks conferences start at $5,000, and those are limited availability, and they are only given to people that are just starting out in their career or never attended a TED, previously. So it's just a limited number of tickets available for that range, and then it goes up to the standard price of $10,000. And then the next level up is donors, and that's at $25,000. And then the patron is for a 5-year membership at $250,000. Yeah, that's $250,000. And why is this important, you may ask? Like, why am I even talking about TEDx or TED Talks? Well, I'm one of those people that have always been a fan of TEDx and TED Talk. I've just starting this podcast and working on my books and everything else, I've, always wanted to do a TED Talk myself or a TEDx first. And but I'm getting started, just, baby steps right now, because like I said, it's a very, very tough process to get into. And I'll share with you a few of these speakers that were there. at this one event that I went to. But why is this important? Like I said, it's extremely important for people that are passionate about sharing their ideas to the world, and to be a speaker at these popular, prominent events. It's a very long process to even get nominated, or if you want to even to self-nominate, you want to nominate yourself. They get so many applications, all the time. And they do review each application in detail. And you may not even get chosen. And if you do, it may sometimes take a couple of years before you even get on stage. The preparation itself is very crucial in order to meet their specific guidelines for an exactly 18-minute speech. And you can't go a second above that strict time guideline. And, people always wonder, why does TED Talk allow only 18 minutes? What's the big deal? Why is 18 the magic number, right? Well, according to Chris Anderson, the TED curator, this is what was written from his own words. He says, it's long enough to be serious and short enough to hold people's attention. And he also adds that by forcing speakers who are used to going on for 45 minutes to bring it down to 18, you get them to really think about what they want to say, and it has a clarifying effect. And that's what Chris Anderson has to say. So now back to the event in Tampa that I went to on Friday. There were 13 very diverse speakers, have different backgrounds. And my friend, Kristen Collins, like I said, who opened the speaking event, is a healthcare wellness executive. And I'm going to read what they wrote up on her at the West Shore event. Kristen Collins is a magnetic, thought-provoking influencer, inspiring thousands to connect with their purpose, ultimate joy, and love. Her relentless pursuit to improve herself has led her to open her heart to the world and share the lessons she has learned along the way, from better health and healing to connecting people through unique and creative charity and community. Self-understanding, care, and actualization serve as the foundation for this health and healing. Knowing and liking oneself is essential for health and happiness. Through this self-awareness, true healing and love occurs. By courageously pursuing the root cause of one's discomfort, not only do we heal our minds and bodies, but we ascend to healing our family, community, environment, and globe. And that's, my friend Kristen Collins. I met her from another friend from school, from my kids' school, last year. And the event was supposed to be held last November, but because of COVID and the restrictions by CDC, they had to postpone it to this past Friday. So luckily I was able to attend, even though they changed the schedule. And luckily everybody is safe and healthy, and no mask requirements. And so it was a really special event. Again, here's another speaker that stood out to me. Like I said, there were 13 speakers. I'm just going to share a little bit about a few of the speakers that stood out. One is Sybil Stanonis. She is a former NFL cheerleader for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and also a professional dancer that has danced at various countries, as a professional dancer. And her story was she experienced a traumatic childhood accident at age 10 where she injured her face and, lost all her teeth and had to go through very, excruciating dental implants, like as a child. And, they have to keep changing her dental implants as the year progresses because she was still growing. and it was a very painful memory for her, but she had to go through that as a young child through her teenage years, and and then an adult finally, when her her adult teeth finally developed, not developed, but when she was growing up, where she didn't have to go through that change anymore with the implant for her teeth. And then her story was that with that childhood trauma, she also developed anorexia, battled addiction, and even survived a domestic violence in her marriage. And then she became a single mom to her 2 kids. And overcoming that, all those challenges, she, used her love of dance, education, of psychology, and her life experiences to create a curriculum for her program called Dance Therapy with Sybil, and that's to help kids from 2 years of age to 18 years of age that are going through some stuff, and it's her way to share her love of dance to help kids with issues. And then another really prominent speaker, a very young gentleman by the name of Johnny Crowder. He is a 29-year-old suicidal abuse survivor that escaped a near-death experience from a almost fatal plane landing. It almost became a plane crash, but it ended up, luckily, the pilot was able to land the plane. After they experienced, the engine was totally not working. In those moments, when the engine gave out and the law of gravity was no longer in existence, everyone on the plane were literally floating in the air. He said he remembered the pain of the seat belts cutting through his skin, and everybody on the plane it was a dead silence. They were silently praying for their lives, and they knew that they were going to die, so they thought. And he knew that in the end, death will come to everyone, and that the thought of him wanting to commit suicide like a day or 2 prior to his trip, it woke him up. That was his wake-up call, so to speak, when he was near his own death. He was like, why did I want to commit suicide? At the end of the day, everybody's going to die anyways. So luckily, they all survived when the engine found life again, and the pilot was able to land the plane miraculously. He founded an organization, when he had that wake-up call. He founded an organization to help people with mental illness. It's called Cope Notes, and here's what they wrote up on him. Johnny Crowder is a 29-year-old suicide abuse survivor, TEDx speaker, touring musician, so he's also in a band, mental health and sobriety advocate, and the founder and CEO of Cope Notes. That's like to cope, COPE Notes. It's a text-based mental health platform that provides daily support to users in nearly 100 countries around the world. And he's armed with 10 years of clinical treatment, a psychology degree from the University of Central Florida, UCF, yay, and more than a decade of peer support and public advocacy through the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is NAMI for short. And they also wrote that Johnny's youthful vigor for mental health has impacted millions of lives across the globe. So these are just examples of the 13 speakers that share their stories and how they overcame adversities or found ways to create something through their own researches, passions, and determination to be able to share their ideas to help enhance their communities. And I was truly impressed with this event, to be this close to these amazing speakers. And I've always wanted, like I said, to be a speaker myself at one of these TED Talk stages. And I'm starting the process. Got a few things to work on before I could submit, my nomination. And who knows, maybe in a few years, because it takes that long. I didn't realize how long of a process it was. So my dream and my goal is to be on that stage, to help share my ideas and motivation and inspiration as well. So that's a huge goal of mine. And I'm not, I'm talking about TED Talk today, and no, they're not paying me to talk about them. I am just a big fan of TED Talks. And like I said, it's a huge goal of mine amongst many things, like writing all my books and doing this. It's been an inspiration. And, coming from where I came from, my own experiences, my own history and story, I think I could help inspire somebody to follow their dreams. And even getting on, the stage of TED Talk would be an amazing dream come true. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity if you get chosen. So it's a huge, huge goal, like I said. But I also want to quick share, being that it's February and it's already, today is the 20th actually, in a couple of days, February 22nd, would be our 42nd anniversary of coming to America. Wow. Even saying the word, the number 42 just seems so old at one time. And now me being 50, it doesn't sound so old anymore. I mean, it seems like it's been a long, long time since we've been here. But at the same time, it seemed like a blink of an eye that I came here as a young child of 8 to America. And, a lot has happened in the 42 years of my life. So I just wanted to, last week I did the episode of gratitude, and I, was thanking family members and, friends and just employers as well, like my brokers and stuff. But even though I mentioned family members, I didn't specifically mention my father. Like I said in my first episode, that my father was a very tough father figure. I still want to give gratitude and show my appreciation, although he's no longer here with us. My father passed away last March from COVID, and it's almost that time. The time is coming near that it's almost a year. Sadly, and I, have thanked him. I've forgiven him for how he raised us, and he did the best that he could with what he had and of what he knew, the best way he knew how. Although, some things were tough and maybe not acceptable in a lot of ways, but I don't want to go into details about that. But at the same time, my father, both my parents, my father and my mother, risked their lives to escape our country that was going through, even though it was after the Vietnam War, in the late 70s, 79 when we left the country. It was still the aftermath of the Vietnam War. There was still a lot of chaos and a lot of killing and a lot of government corruption, and there still is. And so it was a very scary time. We were 6 or 7 I was 6 or 7 at that time, but I still saw enough to realize the risk we were at that time, the risk that we were, the risk my parents were taking. I just want to remember him because, there were at that time only 8 children, and then with my parents and my grandmother, which is his mom, my paternal grandmother. There were 11 of us when we escaped together and crossed the Mekong River. And this is all going to be in my memoir as well that I'm working on. But just that trip itself to cross that Mekong River was extremely frightful. It was, even though it was in the middle of the day, because my dad, planned it so it didn't look like we were escaping. It looked like we were just crossing, we were just going down the Mekong River on his regular business route, so to speak, because my dad had a boat that accommodated like about 30-something people. And the majority of us were, in the, I don't want to say the boathouse, was inside of the boat, and the rest of the people, were on the top. But then we heard fires, then my dad somehow, instead of going straight down, he made a, he turned the boat towards the border of Thailand to cross the Mekong River. So instead of going north or south, I didn't know which direction he was going, but he went sideways to, cross over to the border. And when the soldiers that, were lined up along the banks of the Mekong on both sides, there were Thai soldiers on the Thailand border, and then the communists was on the other side. The Laotian communist soldiers were on the other side, and fires were being shot into our boat. And at that time, I was down, I was inside. I didn't know. We all just crowded and put our head down. My dad or my mom or the adults put your head down. And, I don't remember. All I heard was just lots of loud noises, sound like firecrackers in my ear. But before that, when I was looking out the window, I see all these bodies floating in the river, and didn't know that they were dead bodies. At that age, who knew that dead bodies float? To me, I thought they were swimming with their face down. Lo and behold, my parents didn't want to say anything until, when we were older. They were like, no, those were dead bodies. And I realized after I came to America and learned to swim, and I realized that you don't swim that way. That, most of them were tribal people, the Hmong people that were shot because they had a lot of black clothes on, and who knows how long they've been dead, but they were floating. And it was, now I dream about it I have nightmares of it every now and again, and it's pretty horrific not knowing at 6 that those were dead people, and you see bags and stuff around them, and that's how they used to float, was blowing air into a plastic bag to use as a flotation device to cross the river. And some areas the currents were very rough, and to cross, if you were lucky enough, you were able to make it. Otherwise, you would drown just from crossing the river, or you were shot at. And some were murdered along the way when they were trying to escape, and they were mutilated, and bodies were just floating around everywhere. So my dad took that chance. Not just our family members, but some friends and other families that said they would pay him after they were able to cross. But my dad never received anything, but he didn't care. He was one of those people that always wanted to help people. So my dad did it with the goodness of his heart to help, the extra people that were in the boat with us. So long story short, that's just one scene of that day that was pretty horrific. And because of that, like I said, my dad risked his life. And prior to that, a few weeks prior, he was, I don't know if it's a few weeks or a few months, but in my mind's eye, or from my own memory, everything just kind of seemed to run into each other. But I remember him, being taken in the middle of the night when these soldiers, the communist soldiers, were coming after him, thinking that he was a spy. And he did work for the American CIA. He was in the Navy, and he did work for the U.S., but he pretended he wasn't. And somehow someone, ratted him out, and they took him that night. My mom and my oldest brother followed the people and begged begged them for his life, and there was another person that they had dragged out from his home. And my brother told me, we heard a gunshot, but we didn't know. We were all inside the house when they came after for my dad that one scary night. They actually shot that person point blank right in front of my brother and my mom as they dragged my dad along. And that was a very scary night. There's more details to that when I write the memoir, when I finish the memoir. But my memory of that night was pretty much confusing because I remember, fragments of the night, and I had substituted certain feelings with that night to be something else, something other than what it was. And I'll share that with you guys in my memoir. It was a very tough, night, and I remembered things differently than what my brother told me. But I had to live with that image in my mind until I was in my mid-40s when I finally realized that there were more to the details that than I remembered. And I had a feeling of fear and nightmares for over 45 years and didn't know that there were more to the story. And it's a very horrific experience. And luckily we were able to get my dad out of that hideous prison where they just pretty much, when they took him, they took all his clothes off and they tied him from his elbow to his ankles. They pretty much wrapped him up they tied him up with a rope that made him look like he was nothing but an animal, and he was stripped of his clothes, and they tied him up they bound him and gagged him like he was nothing more than a pig or an animal. And it was very, my mom and myself went to plead with the mayor or, the person in charge, and we begged. And luckily, my parents knew people in the community and in the government. Somehow we had a connection that was able to help let my dad go, and he, we were thankful that they let him go. And within a week or two after that incident, my father bought that boat and we escaped. So I think it was within a matter of weeks. I don't know the exact time, but it's just everything was a blur at that time. But that's, I just want to, like I said, the anniversary is coming up and, in 2 days. And I just want to show my gratitude towards my father and my mother. My mom has passed too. It's, she passed away over 10 years, almost 10 years now, I believe. It's been a while. And it's, without them, we would not be here. It will be 10 years come July. My mom passed away in July of 2012. So, although we had a rough upbringing, my parents did the best that they could, and they found us a new place to start a new beginning. And because of that, I'm forever grateful. And I just want to share that tidbit because, that's why going on TED Talk is extremely important to me, to not just share my past, but also to share the experiences, no matter how tough you've gone through, what you've gone through in life, you can overcome those experiences and learn from them and try to improve your life and, make something of yourself and not be held back. Those experiences has taught me to, look on the brighter side and always have gratitude and just be thankful Instead of complaining of all the bad things that's happened, be thankful for all the good things that I do have in life. And that's family and friends, a home, and just being safe, having a place to live, and, being able to pursue my dreams, no matter how hard it is. Just to have that freedom. Freedom is huge, and that's pretty much it. I just want to share, the TED Talk events and how it all, interrelates with my life, and how I would love to share my experience with others that have gone through that similar situation. A lot of refugees here in the U.S. as well, that, they don't have to be stuck where they are right now with their lives, just, doing a 9-to-5 job, and whether it's a manual labor and feeling that that they don't deserve any better. We all deserve better, but I want to be that person to inspire and motivate others, and not just refugees from Laos or, from other war-torn countries, just, the people here in America, even the ones that have been raised in a privileged upbringing. Sometimes, they are stuck too. And I want to be that voice to say there's always more to life, but always be thankful for what you have, because it could always be worse. And there are a lot of people that are going through things that are worse than what we have. So that's it. And I just want to thank you guys for listening. And I'll share with you guys some more next week. And I also want to say this month too is February. It is, Black History Month. And I will probably share that a little more on my next podcast about Black History Month, and how that, changes everything for everybody of every color. It's not just for Black people, for all the minorities here in America, how Martin Luther King has paved the ways to try to end racism. I know we're still facing that right now, and we made a huge leap in the last 30, 40 years, or 40, 50 years since the 60s. But there's still more to be done. But I'll share my thoughts on the Black History Month next week. And until then, thank you so much for listening to Designing, Living Life by Design with Chai. And this, at first talking about TEDx was extremely exciting. And then I went down this little, I don't want to call it a rabbit hole, but kind of is, but just thinking of my father and my mother and giving thanks to them for where we are right now, for where I am right now. I'm extremely grateful. And I'm grateful to all of you listeners, and for you to continue listening to my podcast and supporting me. I'm thankful for that. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.